He's angry about mortgages. It's Angry Mortgage. He's swearing. He's cursing loud. He's old. He's opinionated. And he's been doing this so damn long. This program is about mortgages, and this is mortgage advice, but the advice may not apply to your situation. Contact licensed mortgage professionals for specific recommendations before you make decisions about mortgages. You may not agree with Ron, but if you don't, he thinks you're wrong. Oh, and did we say there is a lot of swearing?
We are back, and this is a special pod, a special guest, Scott Terrio, Michalos. And, you know, this is a true thing. I'm going to let Scott introduce himself, but this is a very true thing in any economy. When you want to dig under the surface of an economy, which is, by the way, if you're a guy who's trading stocks or on a big wholesale level, you investigate this stuff all the time. Okay, like if you're a big trader, hedger, like the funds that are trying to stay ahead of the market. One of the most important things you can do is talk to insolvency trustees. Okay, talk to people who handle bankruptcies and what's the other thing you guys do? Consumer proposals. Okay, yeah. So why is it important? If you want to know the coming trends, Scott knows about these coming economic trends, and he's going to tell us some things today that I'm lucky. I talk to Scott frequently, so I know some of these things. But a lot of people do not know some of the things we're going to talk about today. They may suspected, but we're going to talk about some things and some cycles and some situations that are really quite shocking. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Shocking?
Well, it's shocking to me.
And you've seen a lot.
Yeah.
So, Scott, introduce yourself, please.
All right. Well, I'm Scott Terrio. I work for Michalos and Associates, licensed insolvency trustee firm. We are 25 offices across Ontario, licensed by the federal government to file personal bankruptcies and consumer proposals, and Division 1 proposals. And so we do lots of them.
You're the biggest, aren't you? You're pretty much
well.
the biggest
I think we're the biggest privately owned, like non-national
okay. Gotcha. Yeah.
firm. Yeah, we do thousands of them a year. Basically, I'm not going to tell you how many, but we do lots. And so, as you were saying before, and as you and I were talking about at lunch, this is a frontline view thing. So I get why people
cutting edge
are interested because I get to see people's households and budgets. Like you don't see that. I don't see that at the school.
Nope.
I don't see that anywhere else I go except work.
Yeah.
And it tells you a lot about what's going on because that's how life goes, right? It's, how much money are you making a month and how much are you spending a month?
Yeah, it's pretty much fair to say, I believe, that it's your job is a marvelous bellwether about how things are really going with real people every day.
Canary in a coal mine.
100%. Okay.
Yeah, I think so because, when things get bad, when we see things getting bad, the things that the public sees get bad later.
You are
right?
The opposite of a lagging indicator. You are the front line. You are what's going to go wrong. We'll be talking about what's going wrong 6 months from now. You're watching what's going wrong right now.
Or seeing, as this stuff plays out, give it 6 months, give it 12 months, give it 18 months, and it's going to be potentially bad. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the fact that your business, it's funny, my business is cyclical. The real estate business is cyclical. The mortgage business is cyclical. Your business, people don't assume is cyclical, but yet it is. So
very much.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Very much cyclical. So when there's a spike in insolvency filings in Canada, the U.S., doesn't really matter where, usually it's got something to do with the economy, right? Like it's, okay, we just started a recession, so it takes time for people to have to file a bankruptcy or proposal because, they got ways to get around it, put it off, whatever. But if you charted insolvency filings versus, say, recessions, or well, maybe not recessions, but some other economic indicator, you'd find a pattern. Not perfect, but pretty close. I had the terrible timing to get into this business in 2010. So I just missed I got the last 6 months of the big wave of insolvencies from the 08, 09 crisis. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And then I had nothing to do for a bunch of years, basically. So
let's talk about that for a second.
2019 was big, and now is big, which we'll talk about. Okay. But yeah, I'm.
So you actually, is it fair to say, in a time of the zero interest rate program of 2010 through. Yeah. Well, I guess that's one of the things in 2019, whether people remember this or not.
Yeah.
There was a peak in interest rates in 2019. Okay, but let's say that. But you went those years where there wasn't a whole lot of filings going on.
Nope. No, when you have I was going to say generational, it's probably multi-generational housing boom.
Yep.
You don't get any homeowners filing, that's for sure.
The price just keeps going up.
You're making 20% a year on your equity, and everybody's rocking and rolling. And also, it's not just the equity and the wealth on paper, the wealth effect.
Yeah.
It's psychological. Like nobody's thinking that. Nobody's thinking insolvency when things
are
rocking and rolling, baby.
Great,
and that's great. Now, okay, there were lots of people who weren't homeowners during that period who got themselves into all kinds of trouble, and they filed. Yes, and I think we were at the point where 1% or less of our files were homeowners for several years. Like we have a homeowners bankruptcy index, which is nothing other than that. It's just, we do this many files a year, this many people are homeowners. Okay. So that peaked at, I think, 33% back in 2012. Doug will correct me, I'm wrong probably, but it's something like that.
Well, it's sort of a hangover from the 2008 financial crisis.
Yeah, and it's been before the boom, right?
Yep.
2013, things were starting to go nuts and everybody was doing, or at least looked like it was going to go really great.
Yep.
So homeowners weren't filing because they didn't need to, or they thought they would never need to, and they were right. And so now it's crept back up to maybe 6 right now, something like that.
6,
from
so
one.
From 1%.
Yeah. Like it was at all virtually nothing. In fact, it was nothing in August of year before last or something. It was the only time it was 0. But it's
so
something
there
like 6
was a
now.
month where in your large operation, 0
not
homeowners
a single homeowner
filed
1
anything.
month. Yeah.
Okay.
Now it was like a down month because in August nobody's filing insolvencies. They're busy getting into trouble.
Right.
So not only is our business cyclical, it's also very seasonal.
Yep.
Right. Like nobody files in December because there's Christmas.
Yeah.
Nobody files in June, July, August because they're on vacation.
Yeah.
Like they're running stuff up during those times. Now September to November. Oh yeah.
It's cooking.
January 21st when they get their credit card bill. Oh yeah.
It's cooking.
Until probably June or May. But I think what we're going to see in the next couple of years is that seasonality is going to get wiped out.
So let's just.
It's just not going to. It's not going to matter.
We'll cut to the chase. You're very busy right now.
Yeah.
Okay. So give me some of the contributing factors.
Well, the housing market has slowed, if not really gone down. That's number one. It's a psychological thing, right? Like for 10 years, everybody was housing boom, get rich quick. And so even when things are flat, they feel like they're down, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like when you've been on a run and, you're at the roulette wheel and you win 10 times, then you lose once. Well, you only lost once, but it doesn't feel good.
Yep.
So there's the psychological part of that. And it's the accumulation of debt is the other thing. Like you can accumulate a lot of debt when your house is going up 20% a year and your equity's going up, right? And you're both working.
Oh, you got the HELOC too.
Well, and you got cash flow, household cash flow, because that's important. And now people are starting to, like maybe they're losing their jobs or they're doing less hours because the economy's starting to flag a bit. So all these things that are happening in the economy are manifesting themselves in people's household cash flow per month. And that's how people live. Everybody lives monthly, right? You know that from the mortgage business. Sure, everything's monthly. 100%. You don't buy $1 million house. You buy a $4,000 a month house.
Exactly.
Right?
It's the financialization of everything.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Yeah.
Yep.
So drill down on that for a second. So you have actually observed, because I remember talking to you back in, of course, in 2020, there was nothing to do for you because everybody was getting a check.
Yep.
Right? I mean,
Well, that's the other thing
and
is,
the debtors couldn't collect.
and because
right?
2019 was very busy. Like we started to go, whoa, this is coming back. And then COVID hit and everybody thought, well, now you're going to go crazy. And the exact opposite happened, right?
Yeah.
When you're not working and you're getting government checks, you're creditor proof effectively. So we got a
Some
million.
of the stores are closed.
The calls I took,
I
was taking 15 calls a day because people had just gotten laid off, right? Yeah. But none of them could file. So we told everyone the same exact thing. When you're working, give us a call because that's when your wages are under threat if you're not paying your debts and whatever, right? But when there's no threat, so like a whole bunch of people called us and other trustees in that period, but most of them didn't file until next year.
And the reality was the government told lenders to shut up. Okay, like you got to give you got to give moratoriums. You got to give 6-month gaps.
Well, and banks are smart enough without the government telling them that, like to know, okay, like this is unusual.
Yep.
It's like,
we never had a plague before.
Well, no,
like for 100 years.
1919, exactly. Banks aren't stupid,
Yeah.
right? Like, okay, the government said whatever, but I'm pretty sure the banks figured out, okay, we're not going to be doing much for the next little while, right? In terms of collection. Yeah, because you can't get, a bank isn't sending its on retainer lawyer to court
when there's no court.
When there's nothing at the end.
Nothing at the end.
Like, I'm not going to go through the 3-step court process of plaintiff's claim, judgment, hearing, execution, when I know the execution's not going to become a wage garnishee. Not going to happen. So they're not going to do it. So they just stopped.
Gotcha. So, big pause. And, there was I think it would be fair to say that immediately post-COVID, the economy took a jump. Like, things were, but now, literally.
For a bit.
So would you say it's the last 14 months? Is that fair? 14, 16
I'd
months?
say we've been busy for 18 months, more 12, more the last 12 than 18.
So
but,
it's a ramp
but it started to really appear 18 months or so ago. Part of that was banks being able to collect again when people were working post-COVID. Also, remember, then this is a big thing. CRA was Santa Claus during COVID.
Left you alone.
They were, but they were dishing out money.
Handed out checks.
Their job became the arm by which the government gave money to, because they know where everybody is. They got all their bank accounts. Here's your money, right? So that was easy to do. Now they screwed some of it up by doing it in gross versus net, and now people owe money, whatever. But in the last 18 months, or maybe more now, CRA have gone right back the other way.
And there's
they are in collection mode like you can't believe.
Sure. So there's a lot of them. Like there's more people working for CRA than there is active armed forces in Canada.
Well,
it's massive.
It's our army.
Yeah, it's our real army. It's our actual army.
Our real army is our revenue service.
That never leaves their homes. Yeah, exactly.
They work from home. If Trump feels like coming up here, well, we're not going to stop him at the border, but we're going to get him on taxes. We'll get him later.
All right. So you made a great point a minute ago that now is something you hadn't seen for years. It's a greater frequency of people losing their jobs. And you also made the really compelling point that we see in our business that the hours are down. Like there's no overtime.
Right.
And the bonuses shrank or gone. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's something you see every day.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You don't have to lose your job. Like that's pretty dramatic, right? And obvious. It's more like a creep thing where, somebody was working part-time and getting less hours, or they're working at a restaurant making pretty good money on tips, but now they're not because who's going out with the cost of groceries going up and all that stuff.
One quick point, Scott, I want to make that like everybody who works in the proximity of downtown Toronto will say, no, you're wrong. The restaurants are full. It's going big time. Yeah. Because folks, like this is what I got to start to really I got to have a warning label on this. So Toronto...
Are you going to get sweary now?
Yeah, pretty quick.
I hope so.
Toronto is the epicenter of the richest fucking people in Canada, okay? Oh, yeah. And everybody who has an expense account is here, okay?
I work within swinging a cat distance of all 6 big banks.
Sure.
So, you go for lunch at, I don't know, Jump or Canoe or something, which
it's
I don't
packed.
Do a whole lot, but they're full.
They're full.
Yeah.
So this is what I can try to
even the food courts now.
Yeah,
there's been a change actually in, I would say, the last 6 months.
Yeah.
Last year when I was going downtown, there was nobody.
That's changed.
Oh, yeah. Well, from Tuesday to Thursday. They don't go Monday, Friday.
Friday.
But from Tuesday to Thursday, I'm telling you, like, it's busy.
So this is what I got to express to everybody. Like, in Red Deer, Alberta, the restaurants aren't full.
No.
Okay.
Earls and Red Deer probably isn't doing great.
But Alberta's doing good. But the restaurants in Sudbury aren't necessarily full. Okay. But the restaurants right in the heart of the city of Toronto, where there's nothing but people with big expense accounts that are rich as fuck, they're doing fine.
Yeah, the Earls at King and York is very busy. Yes, so you're right. Like it's very artificial. Don't go by anything that's happening in downtown Toronto, right?
Don't. That's not your metric.
Because as you mentioned at lunch, right? If a banker has 4 Toronto developers around the table with them, he's going to hear about all that stuff, but he's not going to hear about the developers who are getting crushed in Barrie and whatever, Port Colborne,
So for everybody who just wants to jump on the keyboard and say, no, the keg is full, please relax. Okay, I mean it is not this is the guy who actually knows whether things are going wrong. Okay, your keg meter.
And I'm off Twitter now, so don't bother. Don't look for me. I'm not there. Yeah.
So everybody who has this keg meter, like I was in the keg on Saturday and it was
keg
full.
Meter.
Okay, so everybody who has that
your keg-sized opinion of
exactly. So this is the guy who actually is telling you from every day, day in, day out, multiple calls a day, this is the reality. Okay.
Yeah, and we're seeing all kinds of weird stuff now. I have my list here, but inflation has caused a lot of problems. Real ones. Not just like, okay, my grocery bill's gone up. Well, there's only so much there a month, right?
Right.
And when you've maxed out your credit, that's all there is. And that's even without your partner not working full time or your partner gets sick and can't work or whatever. So you don't even need to have what we consider an event, because ours is also a very event-driven business, as you can imagine. Losing your job, partner dies, you get a divorce, right? Those are major things that drive insolvencies, obviously. But it can be much less dramatic than that. It can be gradual creep over time, right? Like, okay, I used to spend $600 a month on groceries. Now I spend $1,000. That's a lot, actually. That's 40% increase. Put it in that term.
Yeah.
And if you do that for 12 or 24 months, that's a lot of money, right? And slowly over time, you just erode your purchasing power. You erode your ability to pay your bills, and everything just erodes. And so therefore, at some point, you hit the wall. And that's what I think is happening now, is that organically people are hitting the wall as well now. Doesn't have to be dramatic. It's time.
It just happens. It builds and it happens.
Yep.
So we're housing, mortgage, real estate. So you've told us just now that you saw virtually no homeowners. You talked to no homeowners for a decade. Now you're talking to many more, and the trend is ramping up steadily. Okay, relentlessly.
Yeah.
So, and there's some very, very interesting files you've looked at. So let's talk about a few.
Okay.
Let's talk about the 2 brothers, the cousin, and
the 4 and 5 out of 5.
The cosigners. Let's talk about the magical cosigners.
Okay. So right. So we see a lot of cases where in housing, people bought investment properties, or they just bought their own property. But as you know from your work, not everybody qualifies just as easy as everybody else.
Not by themselves.
So if you're going to get rich quick in real estate, or even just, buy a place where you got, as I believe your point to me was that if you won the 25 bid process, then you've done something. And so, of course, a lot of people got cosigners. I think there's probably way more cosigners now than there ever were in this country by far.
Factually true.
My guess.
100% true.
Right. And so we're starting to see them. And there's all kinds of mix you can think of. Every kind of permutation of cosigning, whether it's just, you and your spouse had to get your mom, who's a, fairly well-off boomer, whatever, to cosign, or even grandkids in some cases. But some of the way they go about this stuff is funny, okay? Because, I've seen as many as 4 or 5 cosigners, or total signers, including 2 or 3 cosigners. But some of them are like, okay, they've got it set up like, I'm 50%, my wife's 49%, and my mom's 1%.
Sure.
Okay, that's That's the equity part.
Yep, only the equity.
But there's 3 on the mortgage. And it ain't 33, 33, 33 either, as you know.
No, this is something.
It's
Scott
joint
I
and
talk
several.
about. Joint and several.
Joint and several is a legal concept that nobody's heard of in this country, I don't think, from the work I do.
Based on all
I know
the people
you
you
do.
talk to.
I know
same
you
with
do.
Me. Same with me.
I know you know, and a lot of your listeners will know, but it seems to me like almost nobody understands it. So I spend a lot of my time talking about this. If you are co-signed on a mortgage with 2 other people, you are responsible legally for the whole mortgage.
You're not on. You might be on the house title for 1%.
Doesn't matter.
You're 100% on the mortgage.
Yes, and in fact,
okay?
if you're 1% on title and you're 100% on the mortgage, that's kind of a shit deal. Sorry?
Worst fucking deal you can imagine.
Okay, so let me get this right. I have 1% of the wealth,
Yep.
but I have 100% of the debt.
1% of the asset, 100% of the debt.
Sign me up for that.
Sign us up. But
Now-
they have no clue that's the truth.
But in mitigation to that, how many mortgages end up going after co-signers? Probably not too many, but there's going to be more. It's going to happen.
Well, we have a 90 for all these last 3 years. We ran a 90-day default run in this country for the big banks of a 14 basis points, which has only risen to 22. So yeah, I mean, there's been not a lot of trouble.
No.
But to your point,
Well, when things go sideways is when it gets serious.
of course,
right?
and this is so true. If you talk to all those mums who co-signed,
Yeah.
they would say, well, all my exposure is only this small amount. Like at most, it could only be a third. But
Or-
it's not a third. It's 100%.
Or what they'll say to you, because sometimes they get them on the phone. So the couple's sitting with me, and mom's on the phone because they're like, we better call mom.
Call mom.
Yeah, you might want to call mom.
better call mom.
Or maybe we do a separate meeting. We have mom.
Yeah.
Either way, mom gets in there and goes, well, I just co-signed so that they could get the mortgage approved. So in other words, like it's a gateway.
Yeah.
So, and then I'm out.
Yeah. I'm
Like-
not really
Oh,
involved.
no, I'm out. I co-signed. It's their mortgage. No, it's not. And so now I don't think any real estate professionals set it up that way intentionally. And I don't think that's a sales tactic, but it's people's understanding. And sometimes you can't make them understand. Like I could explain things to you for 15 minutes and you might not get it anyway, or you might not want to hear it, or maybe you didn't listen.
Or I'll tell you what happens in our business. We can explain it to mom.
Yeah.
And then after we finish the next day, the 2 borrowers say to mom, oh, no, it doesn't really work like that. You don't have anything to worry about. Okay.
Or some period of time down the road, the trustee's explaining it. And
Yeah,
it sounds different.
Yeah.
Like,
Hey, you told me a great one about the problem with filing when mom, who was okay to sign on as a co-signer on the mortgage, but she ain't interested in doing any more borrowing once you get in
right.
trouble.
So let's say my wife and I get a house that, okay, we probably can't afford it, but we're getting a house because we want to get in. Cool.
And the rates might have been low.
We
The rates
get
could have
in.
been low, right?
Awesome. Yeah. Monthly payment works, so who cares?
Yeah.
So my mom co-signs because I didn't qualify.
Right.
Okay, cool. Or her mom or whatever. Somebody's mom. So what were we talking about?
Well, what happens when things don't go so well?
Yeah, yes. Oh, I know what you
And the
sorry,
answer is
I lost
a
my train of
HELOC.
thought.
The answer is a HELOC.
Well,
Okay.
so there's lots of equity. So they come to me and they have all kinds of unsecured debt. Okay, that's what I hear every day. You got lots of credit card, line of credit debt, maybe some tax debt, whatever, student loans.
Car loans, yeah.
Well, car loans aren't part of the proposal, but maybe a car that was returned,
Sure.
which is now an unsecured debt, maybe. But regardless, they also have a lot of equity. So let's say they got 100,000 equity and they got 50,000 in credit card debt. They're not insolvent, technically, not on a balance sheet standpoint. Now, they might be insolvent from a cash flow standpoint where they can't pay their bills as they come due. There's 2 definitions. But now we could still do a proposal. But here's the problem. What I will tell them is, you don't need to do a proposal. You got 100,000 equity in your house. Go to your lender. Say, I would like to get a home equity line of credit or refinance and pay the unsecured debts.
Because most of the people you meet have not harmed their credit yet.
Well, yeah, I file
half,
people
right?
whose credit scores are 800 plus, Ron, every week.
right,
Okay,
right.
and we can do a separate podcast on that if you like, where your credit score doesn't measure your credit worthiness as much as it measures your profitability to the banks. That one, anyway. So the point is, that if you go to get a HELOC or a refi, as you know in your job, you got to get everybody to sign. Well, mom,
Yeah, if mom is on 1%, she's got to sign.
but if you come to mom and say, I got 50,000 credit card debts. I didn't want to tell you this, right? You're a screw up now to mom Sorry,
Particularly
the mom's
if you're the
now got a
son-in-law,
different
you're a
view
real
of. Mom has now adopted a different view of the situation.
Yeah.
She's now going, okay, what else are you not telling me? And you say, well, I would like to refi or get a HELOC on this to pay this off instead of doing a proposal with the lovely trustee firm. So, and then mom goes, I don't think so. Because
mom's all, fuck that.
Well, I already did this. And then you managed to rack up 50 grand in credit card
on your
debts.
own.
Mom's not too keen on this.
No.
This is what I see now.
Yep.
And so that's out. So you have all this equity, but you can't tap it because you got to get everybody to sign, and mom won't sign. I don't blame her. Yeah. So that's part of the problem. Is now proposals or bankruptcies, not in that case be proposal, will be driven by the fact that the third party who co-signed isn't interested in doing more.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's going to happen.
Let's swing back to two brothers and a cousin.
Okay.
Because I love this one.
Different sheet.
Great. Okay.
So what I'm seeing now also is, as you said, the brains of the operation. So some young dude, because it's always a young dude.
Always a young dude.
Always a young dude. It's never an old dude. It's always a young dude. And the young dude...
It's never a young woman.
Decides,
it's always a young dude.
I haven't seen any yet. Yeah. I'm sure there will be. But it just seems to be like a guy thing. Guys are dumb. I'm a guy, I'm dumb. My wife will vouch for that. But like...
Oh my God, I've got a wife who'll like literally give you a book about that.
I'll talk to Mrs. Butler. So young dude, hotshot, decides I'm going to get rich in the real estate business because it's booming.
Booming.
And you know what? I don't think anything of that. I think, okay, if you can make money, either buying houses, flipping them, renting them out, go for it. Because frankly, our economy does not lend itself to people getting rich from a business standpoint. We're not a business-friendly country. We're not an entrepreneurial nation.
No,
we're just not. We're just not. So
things,
when the housing boom hit, I got all kinds of sympathy for people who thought, I'm going to get rich in housing, or at least that's my chance to, if it takes me my whole life, but then I got a big nest egg at the end, great. Mm-hmm. So that's not what I'm here to do, is to bash the idea. What I am going to do is tell you how some of them went about it. Okay. So this guy gets his two brothers and a cousin on title.
There's four of them.
Yes. Okay. There's him, there's his brother, there's his other brother, Daryl, and then there's his cousin. So now he has his own place, but they get a rental property, and they also decide to go for a pre-sale condo.
Now, the interesting part, I thought, the fascinating part with this was, this is a case where the people actually got the down payment through unsecured debt.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm getting to that, but yes. So the way they got all their down payments, or at least the two for the pre-sale and the investment property, was by pooling together their unsecured lines of credit. So 20 here, 10 here, 30 here, whatever. And the one brother's not wealthy. He's got a great professional job. He's either a lawyer or a doctor. Okay, you can take a pick.
Lawyer, doctor, dentist.
Doesn't matter. You pick. I'm not going to tell you he's one of those.
Big income.
So it gets worse. So they get these places. So the pre-sale is being built, okay, and they gave up the down payment. Okay, great. The rental property goes a bit sideways on them. Like
how much sideways?
Well, they number one, it drops in value because they bought it right at the peak, and now it's down because it's a condo in dog crate condo in Toronto.
Oh, they bought a dog crate condo in 21.
Dog crate condo, yes. Okay. So they're down, right, a lot. So their negative equity, like 6 digits, easy. Whoa. And they lost a tenant for a while. So they down on a bunch of rent, cash flow, and they're all scrambling to, kind of. And of course, when this happens, it's the brains of the operation that everybody turns to. Because
you promised it was
this was
great.
your idea, dude,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So, the brother who's the either lawyer, doctor, chiropractor, whatever, isn't the guy going, I'll cover that rent shortfall this month and next month and the month after. It's dude, okay?
Because they depended on dude. Dude was the mastermind.
Yeah,
okay.
There's always a guy,
yep.
Okay? And it's always a guy. And and it gets worse. The investment property that they bought, him and the one brother, Daryl, not Daryl, put $95,000 renovation loan into it.
Holy shit.
And I won't tell you who it's with. Okay? You'll know anyway. But $95,000, not like $10,000.
No.
He didn't do the cupboards.
No.
They did the friggin'
They did it.
Main floor.
They did it.
So, and a deck or whatever. So now they're that much more underwater because the value went down, right? So now they're underwater and
they have a second mortgage.
Is worse. Yeah. And so So all of this, the problem here is not just what I've described, but it's that one brother all of a sudden wants out because he lost his job, or what in this case. He's like, I don't want this anymore. So then what do you do with that, Ron?
So we got a brother who says, I'm not going to be responsible for any of this
I don't
anymore.
want this. I changed my mind.
Yeah. Okay. Change my mind.
I changed my mind.
On purchased properties. Okay?
Yeah. I'm on 2 properties, 100% the debt.
Yeah.
25% the equity. Again, another great deal.
Yeah, great deal.
I got 25% of the wealth and 100% of the debt.
Yeah.
And so not only that, but the pre-sale they can't close on.
Oh, no, they can't.
Because who can?
They can't get a mortgage.
Right. Okay. So that's coming up now. And so they got all this swirling about and everybody's upset and only one of them has money. So where can you see the problem happening?
Well, that guy who's got money is going to be finding out. This is, if you
one of the brothers moved home, like he just said, I'm done, right?
When he moved home, he left the country.
He's gone.
Gone. So this is the graph. This is the graph of that.
And this is not unusual, by the way. My sense
FAFO.
is that this is a thing.
There's a thing. This is the FAFO graph. This is fucked around, found
out. Yeah. There's the FOMO.
Yeah.
Fear of missing out.
Yeah.
There's the FOGO, the fear of getting out. There's the Doug and I come up with a good one, and I'll email it to you, and you can tell your guests in the notes or something. But it's another one; it's a longer one. But there's all these
there's FAFO.
acronyms
there's
now.
There's definitely FAFO.
Yes, and there's FOGO and FOMO.
So, but wait a second. Let me run back to this. This is incredible.
Or fear of.
So hold on, Scott. One of these guys.
The fog foo.
Hold on. One of these guys just fucks off out of the country. He's gone. Okay.
Yeah. He's gone.
Okay. He's gone.
He said, "I'm done." He didn't just, he told them he was done.
So hold on.
He didn't just leave. He said, guys, I'm leaving.
He wasn't the mastermind.
No.
He was along for the ride.
He was Daryl.
He said, I hate this fucking ride.
He was Daryl.
I'm out. Okay.
So the other Daryl's still in.
They're still in,
and then the other guy is still in. So this guy just left. But it's the fogfo.
Fogfo?
That's it. The fear of getting fucked over.
Yeah, fear of getting fucked over. Now they
because I can say that on this podcast.
You can say that on this podcast.
The normal podcasts that I go on, I can't.
No.
So, but anyway, so they got all these problems. Buddy Mastermind also, in addition to the $95,000 renovation loan, has $175,000 in unsecured debt.
Holy shit!
Well, because part of it was the down payment on the one place and the other, and then of course when they get into cash flow trouble,
they look to him to deal.
Well,
with it.
His job isn't giving him more money.
Right.
He has a good government job actually, but he doesn't have enough.
He can't get an increase.
No.
Right.
So that's the problem is you get this vortex of stuff that happens kind of all at once when you do this. And like if things hadn't gone sideways in the market and the economy wouldn't happen.
Could you sold something.
But you got to we talked about this. There's 4 or 5 things that have to go right. And in this case, at least 4 of them went wrong. So what I'm seeing and who I'm meeting with now are the 4 out of 5s and the 5 out of 5.
Let's break down the things that can go wrong. So the price of the property didn't go up.
It went down. So automatically your mindset, even though on paper you don't have to sell necessarily your negative equity, okay, and maybe it'll come back over your lifetime, but right now you're down, and that wasn't the plan. Ron.
So that's number 1. Number 2, the interest rates went way up.
Yeah, payments.
I didn't expect that.
And not just one payment. You got your own place, you got your rental place, and you got this pre-sale that's coming down the pipe that I don't think I can qualify for this because of all the stuff we just talked about.
And then number 3, the friggin' rents started going down.
Yes,
or the tenants
and the tenant vanished for 8 months. So now you got no cash flow at all, and the mortgage has still got to get paid.
Yeah.
So that's 4.
Number 4. So now we've got
number 5 is Daryl. Number 1 leaving the country.
Yeah. So one of the group says, "Fuck this.
Yeah,
I'm out." Okay. Now.
Because when you get in with a group, you can only control you.
That's it,
right? You can't control any of your partners, and anybody who's ever been in business. I mean, I used to work for John Deere, and the dealerships had multiple owners, and sometimes one of them said, "I'm done," right? And then there's a big problem, and so again, now that's easier to fix than this.
But hold on, like everything about what you just said is common, happens all the time. And this is what we endlessly tell people about everything to do with groups. We say the same thing all the time. Listen, 50% of people who buy houses together who are married divorce. Yeah. These were people who were sleeping 40. With each other. 40, okay? Yeah. And they're fucking mad at each other. Okay.
Yeah. They see each other naked.
Yeah.
Daryl's probably since they were kids, maybe. But
we're talking about semi-strangers and relatives. Okay.
Yeah.
They aren't going to sleep together at night.
And we haven't even mentioned mix yet.
Oh my God! So yeah. So look. Here's but what's going to happen eventually is poor rich brother.
Yeah.
Is eventually going to get nailed for a lot of stuff.
He's holding the bag.
Because he could be litigated, when they don't close in the condo, he could be litigated by the developer.
Yes.
Because he's the only one who's...
He's at least lost the deposit or his portion of it. That's gone.
But once they figure out...
He's getting sued.
Once they figure out he's got a big income, he is getting sued.
Because as you and I talked about at lunch, it's less so now that you might get sued. If it's any big development, you're getting sued.
100%.
Because the lawyer has a list of people, and he's already gone through 17 and you're 18.
You're
not closing.
You're just a template
to
him.
And the
letters are ready to go out.
They just fill in the blanks. They fill in the blanks,
Fill
right?
in the blanks, okay.
Yes. So he's got a lawsuit now. He's got a professional practice. He may or may not have a limited liability partnership that he's in. So, but that guy is probably worse off because
she's definitely worse off.
One guy's gone.
Yep.
He's out. The other guy isn't gone, but he isn't flush.
Nope.
And he isn't rich, and he doesn't have any other assets.
Yep.
So his only assets have no equity. Mm-hmm. And so if this guy, where'd he go, files with me, what's the other guy going to do? Because he still owes the debts that he's joint on.
The guy you filed is off the hook.
Yeah, he's good.
Yeah.
So that's the other problem is if whoever files, the other guys are left.
Jesus.
And so do you want to be the one guy who's got actual money who hasn't filed? And your buddy and your brothers, what am I saying, buddy? Brother, cousin just filed. So this is like the tip of the iceberg, okay? But I think from what I've heard, this is not atypical of what's happening.
No. This is not atypical at all. No.
So it's coming.
That's coming.
It's coming.
Now, maybe my absolute favorite of what of files you've told me about is
this one.
Lady who rents.
Yep.
Buys 2 rentals,
yep.
But she doesn't own a property.
Right.
Let's go
I
to
believe
this one.
I titled this one, and I hesitated to do this, but I thought, hell with it. Amateur hour in real estate. Okay? Because not to be, like, again, we're back to Canadians can only get rich so many ways. Okay? We don't live in the States. So I have sympathy for people who've tried to better themselves by doing real estate when it was booming.
Well,
it makes sense.
They had the guts to take a risk.
It makes sense. Yes, it's risk. They took a risk. We always knock Canadians for being risk averse. Okay, so they took risk. But on the other hand, there are ways to do these things. And so this woman, and I've met with several people who are renters but who own not 1 but 2 rental properties. So they
don't live in their own home.
They're paying someone else's mortgage where they live, but someone else is paying their mortgage where they live, but they're not really paying because they have stopped paying or whatever disaster scenario has happened. Okay. And so again, we're back to she and her husband got their mom on the 2 properties. Oh, one was in Barrie and the other one's in Toronto. She lives in Toronto because she works in Toronto. But she doesn't own in Toronto. She owns these other places in Toronto with her husband and her mother-in-law. Mother-in-law? Mother. I can't remember. Doesn't matter. So anyway, Dog Crate condo underwater. Mm-hmm. The Toronto, the Barrie one. Really underwater, actually. We talked about this too. Like, Barrie became all these outer towns during COVID.
2021,
work from home. Everybody went, I'm going to move to Barrie where it's half the price and I'm going to work from home forever. And then they got called back to work. And so now things are dropping. So she also lost a bunch of money in the stock market. And this is something else that I'm seeing. Well, the brother guys, one of them was crypto scheme.
Oh, Jesus.
The exchange went under when back in I think it was 2016 or 19 when crypto went down for like 3 or 4 months, like drastically, and everybody, like all these exchanges disappeared. He was one of them.
Okay.
So anyway, my point is, she's renting where she lives, but she owns these 2 other places, but she's on with her mom and her husband. Her husband got sick and couldn't work for a while. So now he's on disability, so he's on 40% of his income. And again, one of the renters disappeared for a while.
So this is a 5 out of 5 disaster again.
This one's 5. At least 4. Right? The other one's certainly 5. This one's probably 4, but I think at 4 and 5 it doesn't matter.
Yeah, because this is a really important point. Because what we're going to talk about soon is how we're talking about 5 out of 5 disasters. So equity went to shit, rates went up, payments went too high, and then we've got the tenant fuckery. So you either have a tenant who stops paying or disappears. You can't find, because rents are falling. You can't find anybody fast enough And then something in the personal life
Or you can't
goes
charge
wrong.
enough.
No, you can't charge enough. Something in the personal life goes wrong. Something in the actual income side of your personal stream of income, either your budget, your bonus gets cut, your hours get cut, or one of you loses their job or gets sick.
Sometimes people can't absorb one event.
Right.
For the ones who can absorb one event, 2 is hard. 3 is no. Okay, and 4 and 5 are just no. There's no way. So I think we're seeing the 4s and the 5s now. It took a while for them to materialize, but and then I think we're going to see the 2s and the 3s over the next 12 to 24 months.
So circle back to these people again. So their issue is also that the equity in their properties is non-existent.
Yeah, or negative.
They're underwater.
Grossly negative.
They're underwater on their mortgages.
Yeah.
So just as a trustee, what can you do for these people?
Well, okay, so when you come to me, I ask you a bunch of stuff, but what really matters is what do you own? What do you owe, obviously, but to tell me what you're going to do is mostly what do you own, what do you make, and have you ever filed a bankruptcy before? That's it. If you tell me those 3 things and how much you owe, I can pretty much tell you what we're going to do or how it's going to look. So if you have negative equity, that's not a factor. If you don't have other assets that are not exempt, like you don't have a bunch of investments, TFSAs, RRSPs, even RSPs, you can have 10 million RSPs as long as the last 12 months you haven't contributed anything. That's a great deal. That's
important to know.
Tell people
absolutely,
this.
Yeah.
So, but if you don't have all those assets, then there's nothing there that will factor into what you're going to do. Because when we calculate a consumer proposal, how much you're going to pay, what we do is we calculate a hypothetical bankruptcy filing first. And I just do that live with people. They're like, oh, I don't want to do bankruptcy. I know that. Okay, we're not doing bankruptcy. But I'm going to calculate bankruptcy, and then in a proposal, you're going to give the creditors more than they would have gotten as realization in bankruptcy because you're making them wait 60 months in the proposal potentially versus 9 or 21 in the bankruptcy. So if I say, Ron, I'm going to give you 20 grand in 21 months for my debts, and you say, great. And I say, oh, you know what, Ron, I changed my mind. I'm going to give you 21 grand in 60 months. What are you going to say?
Yeah, I'll take it.
Screw you.
Oh, really?
Screw you. Well, I'm going to make you wait 3 more years for the same amount of money? No.
Oh, okay.
So that's where I'm going. So the creditors want to get more because you're making them wait longer. That makes sense. Okay. And it also allows you more time and lower payments per month because it's stretched out further.
Okay, gotcha.
And you get to keep your house and all that stuff. You don't get all the bankruptcy ratings and all that stuff. So that's why when you have negative equity, I don't care.
Okay, but just I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second because I want to get clarity on this for the listeners.
Sure.
So you can't keep making these mortgage payments.
Yeah.
So what has to happen? I mean, you let them go, the bank takes them back.
No, so secured debts are not part of what we do because there's an asset tied to the debt. There's a security. So car loans, mortgages, those we list as he has this. But you're going to if you keep paying your mortgage payment, you keep your place, even if there's negative equity.
But it sounds like in the case of the woman who rents and has 2 rentals, she's not going to make those mortgage payments.
If you can't make your mortgage payments, then we're having a different discussion, right? Okay. You're giving it back, and if there's a shortfall, it becomes unsecured that we put into the bankruptcy or the proposal. So a secured debt can convert to an unsecured debt. So if you most common is cars, but this is going to be houses 12, 24 months from now. We'll be talking about that more.
Yeah.
What happens now is, as you know, if you want to learn about the economy, don't look at mortgage default or delinquency rates because it doesn't tell you much because that's the last thing people are going to stop paying.
Last thing.
But look at car default rates.
Which is skyrocketing.
Yes, because that's the second last thing people pay, right? Because they want to keep their car. They won't pay their credit cards, and they maybe could put CRA off as long as they can. And student loans, that's a dysfunctional organization. We won't pay them for a while. What are they going to do? But I'm going to pay my car loan because I want it in the driveway and I want to drive it. I'm certainly going to pay my mortgage or my 2 or 3 other mortgages. But the car loan I will let go before I lose my shelter.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So that's why you look at car delinquencies more than housing. But if you give a car back, because if you call me and you say, okay, I got all these problems, I got all these debts, and I got this car. And of course, the car is always expensive. Okay. Nobody tells me they got a 2010 Toyota Corolla. Nobody. Okay. It's always a 2025 BMW X3. Everybody. So that's 60 some grand or whatever. I'm not a car guy. I don't care, but it's a lot. And so you can't keep paying it. So I say, okay, well, give it back, email your dealer or if you know the person who's the Scotia Dealer Advantage or TD Auto Finance guy, and tell them I'm done. I've cleaned it out. I've taken the plates off. It's locked. It's safe. Here's the location. Come and get it, or don't. I don't care. It's your problem because I've told you. Yep. So then what happens is we do a proposal or bankruptcy, and it's listed as an unsecured debt because we estimate the shortfall.
Sure.
Because they sell the car for nothing. You owe them 20 grand, and that 20 grand is unsecured. Now it goes in here. Yeah. Same with mortgages.
Right.
And this will come. Not yet.
Not yet.
But people will end up saying, I can't pay my mortgage. Yep. Jingle mail. Here's the keys. Now in Canada, there's full recourse, except for Alberta. But if you file an insolvency, there's no recourse.
Exactly.
It's just the shortfall on the mortgage goes into the bankruptcy or proposal, whatever we're doing, just like any other debt. There's no priority, nothing. So that's going to happen.
So this the important thing that I've got for the listeners is you went the better part of a little bit more than 10 years where you never saw this stuff, or once a year. Mm-hmm. How many times are you seeing it now?
A few times a week.
Like,
and that's anecdotal, and I've got numbers that I can tell you about whatever, but most of it's not materializing yet. So you're not going to there's nowhere where you can go in the insolvency data to see how many homeowners are filing. That's why we track it. Right. Because I can't get it from the OSB.
And the other thing is that this is a great point, is that people will come to you for an initial discussion.
Yeah.
You'll outline what could happen. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned to me that if it's really simple, you just own a shit ton of credit cards, you can't pay them, you don't have any secured items. Yeah. We're just going to file a proposal.
We're filing next week.
And that's fast.
Yeah.
Okay. But people who've got assets.
Yeah.
People who own homes. That's a longer drawn out process.
Well, because home equity is not exempt.
Right.
Well, there's $10,000 exemption in Ontario because property law is provincial and insolvency law is federal, but that doesn't matter. Right. Nobody has 10,000 in equity.
No.
They either have a lot or they have negative.
Yep.
Or none. So there are things that are not, there are assets that are exempt. And the Canadian Bankruptcy Code is very generous on exempt assets. So, for example, like I said earlier, you could have $10 million in an RSP, and you walk in and say, I got all kinds of unsecured debt, tax, credit cards, tax, whatever, and I'm going to do a bankruptcy or proposal. I can't touch your RSP if you haven't contributed.
Okay.
Because the reason they have the R12 contribution there is so that you don't go stuff your RSP and then call a trustee.
Right on.
Okay? That makes sense.
But if you haven't contributed for 14 months and you got $1 million in RSPs, you keep them.
Yeah. Can't touch them. I've seen that. I've seen that. It's not common, but I've seen it. Yeah. Now, what's more common is you had a bunch of RSPs that are older and you cashed them out to pay. And the problem then is, of course, you get taxed twice because you get taxed when you do it and then you get taxed as income later. Yep. And it almost never works. Like I've seen thousands of examples where people tried that and it just, all they did was delay talking to me later. That's it.
And blew out their RSPs.
Yeah, and ended up owing a shit ton of tax.
So here's a tip for those tiny few listeners who might have to deal with this stuff. If things aren't looking good, stop putting money in your RSPs and make sure you think about this kind of 12-month limitation.
And call me in 12 months plus 1 day.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So
all
that's...
right, so to sum up,
yeah.
That's why I love talking to you. You've got all this real-life stuff that goes on. But to sum up, your feelings from your day-to-day activities are that there is stuff going on in the Canadian economy, particularly in Ontario, because you're Ontario-based. There's more unemployment. There's less hours being worked. There's non-existent bonusing. There's pressure on people. There's more of this underwater mortgage.
Really bad inflation.
There's more of this underwater mortgage that we really see. Okay?
Possibly more inflation than the 1.6% the Bank of Canada told us the other day.
Possibly more. So ultimately,
even my cat thought that was stupid.
Yeah, I don't blame him. And particularly when the real reason for it was just the fucking stupid ESC holiday. Yeah. But anyway, the direction, the direction that you see, the sort of gut feeling you get from your day-to-day work in insolvency is, and I know sometimes when we do this podcast, we get comments like, "Hey, you guys are hammers. Everything looks like a nail to you." Okay. And that's fine. We can live with that. But we also understand trend. Okay. We can measure trend. We can look at mortgages where we're getting asked to look at more refinances, where we're shaking our heads saying, fuck me, that's a lot of personal debt, a lot of consumer debt. And Scott can see what he's seeing in terms of activity, in terms of increase in calls. Like, is it fair to say, if we sum this all up, is that this sort of great real estate wonderland we've had for 10 years or 12 years or 13 years in Ontario particularly, I think the same thing in BC too, but is this incredible success of real estate, can we just say that it's finally just starting to turn around?
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a long rollout.
Because real estate's slow.
We're not going to have a spike in insolvency like in 2009 and 10, where it was like 18 months, where it was really big and then it stopped. This is going to be multiple years because of the factors. It takes homeowners longer to file.
Right.
Everybody, as you know, is up for 5-year renewals. Well, that's not all this year.
Nope, some's next year.
It rolls out maybe 20% each of the 5 years. That makes mathematical sense. Maybe it's worse because, there were more mortgages in whatever year. Of course there were. But like basically anybody renewing in now, next year, year after is going to have some kind of shock.
Almost all of them are paying more.
Yes. And so that's bad. You talk about the factors you just mentioned. How about your mortgage payment going up 40%? Right? That's brutal because that's something you can't fake. Right? Like you have to pay that. Like we go back to the car loan and all the other things you can put off. You got to pay that or you're out. And you got kids and whatever. So these are real factors. This is not something that 5 years ago I wasn't talking about housing. No. I'm not even close, right? 4 years ago we were talking about COVID. Even that's for almost 5 years, 2 months from now. But yeah, this is real stuff. Like I don't see how this does anything else but be, pretty bad for the next few years.
Based on your day-to-day experience, this isn't going to suddenly get better this
I don't
year.
see how.
No, I don't
how,
see how
Ron?
either.
Like you tell me what is going to happen. Like we haven't even talked about tariffs yet.
No, because we don't know the answer.
I don't think we need to.
No,
I think
we don't.
Forget tariffs. This is bad enough.
Enough trouble with this, yeah.
I think if any of this tariff stuff shakes out anything like they've said, that's going to be bad too. It's going to be bad for them too, but just bad enough for us. I care about us. I don't care about them. But I just don't see how this doesn't end up being a reckoning of some kind.
And that's
It's record consumer debt too.
And it's record consumer debt.
Which was okay when housing was rock and rolling. Yeah. No problem. Because every year from 14, 15, 16, 17, everybody rolled out their consumer debt data and said there's record debt. But no one cared because their house was making tons of money for them. But now they're not. And so when you have all of those eggs in that basket start to break, right? I just think this is going to be a long event and it's going to pull more people in than you think. Homeowners have more runway before they have to file than renters.
Absolutely true.
Yeah, they do. But they have less runway now than they did 12 months ago.
And
next year they'll have even less runway.
And this phenomenon of cosigners, which exploded in 2020, 21, and part of 22.
Yeah.
Exploded.
Yeah.
The chickens will come home to roost.
I'd love to know the percentage of homeowners that bought in the last 6 years, let's say, that are co-signed.
Well, I can tell you this on just a back of the napkin basis. In 2021, in our practice, it exploded up to just under 40%.
Not surprised.
Yeah, just under 40%.
Times that by all kinds of brokers and
but not everybody's the same kind of brokerage. But
but still, it makes sense, right? People wanted to get in. And they couldn't on their own.
And parents wanted them to get in.
And absolutely. So the motivation, now we talked about the mom who's not doing anymore. She's not doing the HELOC now, but she got you the mortgage. So she wanted you in, but now she's saying don't make it any worse.
Sure. So let's finish on that note. So I feel this exactly the same way as Scott. We discussed this earlier. Sometimes there's a tendency of people who are not in trouble to point at everybody who gets into trouble and say, they were stupid and they were greedy. Now, yes, some mistakes were made.
There's some of that.
Mistakes were made.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think I ever would have put my money in crypto or NFTs or any of that other nonsense. But now there's going to be a lot of crypto comments in a minute. But anyway, that's fine. But it's gone to the moon.
Not for me.
Yeah. But what we're saying is, in a country where there hasn't been a lot of wage growth. Wages have been pretty much stagnant. Where there's been when there was an obvious opportunity in real estate, particularly in Ontario and British Columbia, starting in 2020, where you saw incredible leaps in property values. Like, why point at those people and say they were stupid, okay, or they were greedy? They just wanted a chance to make the money that everybody who bought in 2020, who bought in 2015,
No, they wanted to
who bought
better
in 2013.
themselves. Like I said, like
they want to better themselves.
you can call it greed, okay, but on the other hand, how many good jobs, Ron, have been created in this country in the last 5 years that weren't government?
Oh, solid, good-paying jobs? Hardly any.
It's insane how much of our good job employment growth has been sourced solely from government in the last little while.
Sure, because we eviscerated
So,
the energy in the mineral world.
Unless you work for the government, in whether it's in a city or you work from home somewhere, whatever, you're in this class of people who are just fighting their way through life, right? And so, Dave Chilton, years ago, very farsightedly, I think, told me that someday you're either going to work for the government or you're going to be not doing very well. And he ain't far off. And it might get better, but we're pretty bad right now for that. Like it's all these people have these great jobs with lots of benefits and everything, and then all these people don't. And so,
the only real pensions are in the government.
Unless you work for a gold-plated company, and most of those.
Not many of those.
But most of those, like I worked for John Deere, but I started in like way long ago, and I had a gold-plated everything. But they don't now. The guys starting now, they don't do that anymore.
No.
Like it's not on knocking John Deere. Don't comment on that. It's big companies across the world. If you go work for Amazon, everywhere. Do you think they're going to give you a gold-plated pension? No.
You fuck all.
They'll give you what you make, and you'll like it.
And if you join a union, they'll shut the fucking warehouse down.
And so so that's my point. And his point, like I said, very farsightedly, was someday it's going to come down to you either work for the government, you're doing great, or you better do something yourself. And that gets back to the quote greed thing, which I don't think is really greed. It's what else do you do, right? Like we talked at lunch. If you start a business, there's massive risk.
Massive.
Okay, so I want to spend 30 years busting my ass and not seeing my family, and probably it'll fail. Or I can buy a house and it'll go up 20% every year. What would you do? Exactly. I'd do the other.
That was
so it's easy to knock that.
That's the right point. That's the right point. You're right.
But
don't get me wrong.
People have been sucked into this because
we're not. Scott and I aren't supporting the crazy flippers. We're not supporting people who bought a house and
there was lots of irresponsible crap
and painted it and put in some IKEA cupboards and made $400,000. That's not who we're talking about. We're talking about people who just said, okay, my only hope, I believe my only hope, and let's face it, if you bought a house in 2000 or 2004, 10 years later, you looked really fucking smart.
Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
And if you bought two of those, even smarter.
Yep.
Okay, and that gave you a
people
chance.
Notice that.
They notice it. You see it. You look at it. It's obvious.
Their neighbor got loaded. Great. It's awesome. Let's do that. Right.
But the timing wasn't right.
You have to get the timing exactly right. And I'm afraid that ship has passed because I can't see another housing boom happening like it did. Immigration's down, like all the factors. There's another factor we haven't even talked about, right? So I get why people did it.
I do too. I mean, I'm still got lots to criticize about bad real estate advice. Although I would imagine that woman who bought the two rentals, if her real estate agent had said, I don't think you should do this, she just would have found somebody else.
Yeah, we talked about that. Yeah. Like again, and I'm not even blaming the professionals here, because what are you going to say to her? I mean, I'll give you a mortgage, or I'll get you a house, because, I mean, you're going to get one. I might as well do it for you. I don't necessarily think it's the greatest idea, but you know what? Go for it. Go for it. Well, yeah, she's going to do the deal anyway. So, I mean, I have a sales background. I would do that deal. Yeah, of course I would. I'd probably tell them, here's 5 things you want to worry about, but okay, they're not going to do it anyway. Great.
All right, listen, thank you, Scott. And I think this is an important episode because, again, and I believe this because I've watched big people who do the research for hedge funds talk to people like Scott, that this is an important harbinger of the future. Because it's very ground level, and this is very, very much what you look at first to try to know what's going to go on 24 months from now.
Yeah, canary in a coal mine thing.
100%. Thank you, Scott. Really
Thank you,
appreciate
Ron.
it. My pleasure. And we'll see everybody next week.
If you like the pod, well, don't just sit there. Go to YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and all the other ones and like the pod. And don't forget to subscribe so we can keep being angry at mortgages and swearing about mortgages. Angry Mortgage could use your support.